Looking for the latest comic book to add to your collection? How about the last card for that Magic the Gathering Commander deck? Well, the comic book store's got you covered. Shop online at comicbookstore.tcgplayerpro.com or come in person at 30 North Main Street, Glassboro, New Jersey. Pizza people, welcome back. We've got some more spoilers for you today. Hollywood Pizza here, joined by HamHocks42. HamHocks, how you doing?
Hey man, I am doing great. I'm looking forward to it. The set is continuing to just look insane. So I'm looking forward to getting into it with you today.
Totally agreed. I definitely think this set's going to have a huge impact, specifically on Standard. And we'll see if there's some hidden gems for some of the Eternal formats as well. But I hope that you're all doing well today. We're going to dive right into this. So our first card here that we've got for you is Defiler of Vigor. 3 colorless, 2 green for a 6/6 trample Phyrexian Worm. As an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So, yeah, this card seems pretty nuts, right, Ham? Like, this card, on stats, it's good. 5 mana, 6/6. It has trample. And then on top of that, it makes it so any of your green 1-drops are pretty much free for 2 life.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you get to put a counter on each creature you control. This is a Gear Hulk on a... This is just Gear Hulk plus Phyrexian mana plus... I don't even know how to... Like, this is where Magic's at. Like, this card seems pretty nuts, right?
This is insane. Yeah, when I was first reading this card, I was like, okay, 6/6 trample for 5. Good. That's where we want to be. That modern power level. Cool. I'm in. Great. Moving on. Holy crap! All my green permanents get Phyrexian mana, like in their mana value now. Like that could be out of hand. Like I could do some fun stuff with that. And then I read that last ability, and my jaw hit the floor. I was like I get that too. What? It's insane. This card does a little bit of everything. If you are in any kind of aggro situation with green, this thing is bonkers. Like, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, yes, it's a 5-drop, but at the same time, you're getting what you pay for. Like, this is insane. And on top of that, if you do have, like you're saying, 1-drops, the turn you hit this, even if you're tapped out, you can play those 1-drops. So that's incredible. And when you do play out those 1-drop creatures, the whole team gets buffed. So, I mean, by the time this thing is attacking, it's going to be attacking for 8 or 9 consistently, I would imagine. Not to mention anything else you have on the board being significantly larger. I mean, this is one of those cards, if you don't answer it, it's going to run away with the game.
Yeah, this card's just nuts. Like, it's not necessarily like card advantage. It's more like battlefield advantage. And on top of that, essentially it's just cheating on mana. Like, in Pioneer, you can cast your Oath of Nissus for free. You can also cast like your mana creatures for free, just for 2 life. Like, yeah, I think this card, you're gonna see it. What I really like about it too is it's not only good in just monocolor decks. This card's great in multicolored decks. I mean, it reduces the cost. So in a Gruul deck, this card essentially can make like your Spellbreakers only cost 2. Yeah, man, this card seems really crazy to me. It really does.
Oh yeah.
Even at 5 mana, I don't think. Maybe you play all 4, but maybe you play 2 or 3. But I think that when this card, you're right, when this card hits the battlefield, if it doesn't die, it's probably going to run away with the game because all your cards are just going to get huge.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gruul specifically. I mean, we're in a situation with Halana and Elena and Reckless Stormseeker in the format, so this thing could also have haste very easily. Halana and Elena specifically, that ability to buff, put +++ counters on each creature would buff them and in turn buff something else. I mean, the potential for this thing is just off the charts.
3 mana, Halana and Elena.
Feels good.
2 mana, Tolvalar. I mean, we can just go down the list, Ham. There's just so many cards, and I think this card's nuts.
Yeah, and as of this recording, we haven't seen the red Defiler yet, but this is a cycle. We've seen the blue one, we've seen the green one, and we've seen the white one, which we'll talk about later. But, I mean, who knows? You might be able to, in multicolored decks, combine these and be able to pay 4 life and 1 for a Tovolar, for example.
Ugh.
Like, I mean, the possibilities, as long as you've got the life to burn, that could get, like, absolutely disgusting.
These Defilers are messed up, Ham. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. We don't have any banned cards right now, but I don't trust Phyrexian mana. I'll say that much.
Right. Yeah.
So our next card here that we're actually going to talk about is a popper card, or a cube card, essentially. Not really a card I don't think we could see in standard, but hey, you never know, considering that we have seen uh, some type of effects like this before with like the salamander. You know the one I'm talking about. Even though that
I think
one's more
so.
of like a
Yeah.
one drop.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Tolarian Terror here, 6 colorless, blue, 5/5. Serpent, it costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. And then it has Ward 2, so essentially maybe in like your all spells deck. You can just play this for a blue mana 5/5 that has Ward 2, which is fine, but you know, for standard, for Explorer, anything like that, it doesn't seem that crazy. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just like ends up being kind of like a Gurmag Angler type card with a little bit of some
Mm-hmm.
upside with that Ward 2, but I don't know. In Pauper, this card seems really good, and in Cube, specific cubes, this card could also be really good, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think in situations where you have a lot of cheap spells that you're burning through, this could be a killer finisher. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. In certain formats where you have spells that can carry your deck for the most part, and you just need that final punch, this is going to do it. Like any deck that's currently running like Delver, or even is it decks running like Dragon Rage Channeler, I feel you could slot this in, you know. Because yeah, like you're saying, in those decks where you're filling your graveyard, and casting a ton of spells, a lot of times this is going to cost you. I mean, even if it costs you 3 or 4, even a 5 mana, or a 5/5 Ward 2 for that
Pretty
is
sizable
usually worth
body.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you something to work with. So I don't know, it's solid. Yeah, I think it's gonna make a splash in Pauper. We might see it in Standard, but I don't expect to see it. You know, in competitive play necessarily.
Oh, yeah. So our next card here, we have a card that I'm actually really, really high on, Ham. I think that this card reminds me of a specific card that was in standard for quite some time that was very beloved and very hated at the same time. We have Golden Argosy. 4 colorless for a
Mm.
3/6 legendary artifact vehicle. Whenever this card attacks, exile each creature that crewed this turn. Return them to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Crew 1. So now look. All I'm saying is Yorian vibes. And on top of that, I think most people forget that you can crew with more than one creature, even though
Hmm.
it's crew 1. So this card could literally just be like crew 0, and it doesn't even like, it pretty much doesn't matter. Because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, you're mostly just going to be filling this Argosy up with as many things as you can. And even if you suicide it in, all those cards are just going to come back in and kind of just go off once again. I mean, Spirited Companion comes into my mind. Just any like Chupacabra in
Yeah,
older formats, just anything that comes into play effect. I mean, Elite Spellbinder. I think that card's actually leaving. So sorry, that card's
it
leaving.
is. Yeah, but all the same,
Brutal
yeah,
Cathar,
Skyclad
maybe if you
Apparition is
need
leaving too.
to.
Thank goodness. But Brutal Cathart isn't. That's still sticking
Um,
around. We have Lagrella the Magpie. We have all kinds of weird blinky shenanigans that
this
Golden
card's nuts,
Argosy
right? I
can
think it's really
can
strong.
satisfy. Hmm. No, this definitely looks to me like the Wizards R&D team was sitting around with maybe some herbal enhancements. Go, dude. What if Yorion was a boat? And here we
Yeah,
have it.
yeah.
And yeah, I think this card is actually very good. And but the better part is with Yorion, you play them out the one turn, and unless you're in an older format, well, obviously you'd have to be in an older format to be playing Yorion nowadays. But unless you're doing like some Charming Prince shenanigans, you're probably only going to be getting one blink off Yorion. Golden Argosy, you get to get that ability every single turn, and it has 6 toughness. So it can get, addressed in combat. That's possible. But at the same time, it's also pretty likely that it's going to survive,
It's just
depending
gonna
on what
get
you're attacking
blocked.
into.
You don't even care. It's just gonna get blocked, and
Hmm.
then after that, it just doesn't even matter. You're just gonna be so upset or happy with
Yeah,
how much value is about to come back onto the battlefield. I think this card
right.
is it's strong with the adversaries.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
It's just so powerful. I think this card's gonna see play somewhere. Honestly, I think
Hmm.
it's really strong,
Yeah,
especially
don't
for
sleep
being a
on ETB
colorless
triggers.
card.
Hmm.
Crew 1, all these things. Like it doesn't really
Yeah.
need much. You don't even need. You can just play a bunch of rinky-dink cards that kind of just do a bunch of little effects, and then all of a sudden you're just outvaluing your opponent by so much because you're getting so many effects. And if you're playing like some control magic with that as well, I mean, yeah, it's just gonna be really strong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. If you are bummed that teleportation circle is leaving, here you are. This is the next card to pick
Oh
up.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So our next card is actually one that has quite a bit of hype on it, whether it be good or bad. We have Cutdown, black mana, instant. Destroy target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less. So, in standard, I think that this card is going to be fine. Obviously, with certain creatures that exist or are going to exist, it gets better or worse, depending on what the format's looking like. Obviously, it kills a Rafine right away if it hasn't been pumped up yet. But I actually think that this card gets better as the formats get older,
Mm-hmm.
where more than likely a lot of the creatures are going to be more efficiently, specifically maybe even like Modern, Legacy, where you're playing Ragavans. I guess Ragavans banned Legacy, but I said this card kills Delver for a black mana. Same as Push. I think this card's pretty strong, but it's not the end all be all removal spell specifically for standard. What do you think, Ham?
I think that's exactly right because at the end of the day, Fatal Push can hit. I mean, obviously the comparison to Fatal Push is kind of inevitable. You can't help but make that comparison. It's instant speed, one black for a destroy where you got to jump through some hoops. I mean, Fatal Push is the obvious comparison, but and it really comes down to what are you hitting. And in
Mm-hmm.
standard right now, we have, I mean, Thalia, you'd have to pay 2, obviously, if Thalia's on the board, but okay. You got Cathar, sure. But even then, if it's flipped to nighttime, this can't touch Brutal Cathar. This can't even kill a Graveyard Trespasser, which is
That card's
a
strong
creature.
from what I hear.
It's strong. We see it everywhere, right? With good reason.
Can't kill Bone Crusher.
Can't, yeah, exactly.
No
But
Kalidas.
but it could pick off like a Luris, so
Robert the
or
Rich.
like you're saying, Ragavans or those little guys. So
Yep.
like it's
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
more of a cyborg card. I think it's a really, really
Yeah.
strong cyborg card where maybe you don't like. Let's say you're like, oh, I want to play my Infernal Grasp in the sideboard for extra removal against the aggro matchup, or even against the aggro matchup, it's rough because you're losing life. Let's be honest. But
Hmm.
now maybe instead you just play Cut Down because you know that you're going to kill those specific cards a lot easier, like the red decks, the white decks. I
Hmm.
think when you're playing against green, though, obviously it just gets worse, right? Like you don't want to be main decking these, and then they're playing maybe some of the cards that we've talked about in the spoiler already, or some of the cards we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not going to kill them. The cards are
Yeah.
just too beefy. Once you
Yeah.
get
You're
in that 3/3
yeah.
range, it's not even good anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and yeah, if you're going up against green, you're going to be looking at like Invoke the Ancient Tokens. You're going to be looking at Uvenwald Oddities. You're going to be looking at Defiler of Vigor in all likelihood. Or Halana and Elena. Like this can kill a Halana and Elena the first turn potentially, so that's nice. That could be a good hit. But even then, you know,
Yeah,
that's one hit, and I don't know.
that's
It's
asking a lot, man.
it's asking a lot. Yeah.
I think it's a really good card. It's strong. It's a 1 mana removal spell. It's
Hmm.
gonna get played. I just don't think it's as. I think the drawback is real
Yeah.
on
But
Cut
no,
Down.
I think you're dead on. With the more efficient creatures in older formats being the focus, it gets better. I think in standard it's not gonna. We see a lot of 3/3s in standard. Cut down, can't touch him.
Yeah,
You
can't
know.
touch him. And 3/4s, 3/3s. Rafine's gonna be
Hmm.
pumping cards up left and right. I don't think. I think it's
Cards like
just a
Thunder
cyber card.
Raju are still gonna be
Yeah,
bumping
Thunder
stuff
Rider's
too,
gonna
and
be
like
around.
yeah.
It doesn't kill the Boros Sundown,
Hmm.
Sunset Captain or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
Sunset Cavalier. You've got
Um,
Shakedown Heavy. Like it doesn't touch any of those. Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
just not. Yeah,
feels
it's
pretty rough.
good, but like I said, it's strong, but it's too matchup dependent. So
Hmm.
for me, it's more of like a sideboard card or a main deck card, depending on the meta.
Yeah.
Our next card's an interesting one. We have a mythic here. Shanna, Purifying Blade, green, white, blue, human warrior, legendary creature, lifelink, 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, draw X cards. X can't be greater than the amount of life you gain this turn. HamHocks, how do you feel about this one? I feel like it could get out of control with a good amount of life gain, right?
Oh, absolutely. I dig this card. I dig this card a lot actually because I mean, granted, Bant doesn't necessarily have trouble drawing cards, but in a situation where I mean, the floor on this card, you attack with Shanna, you gain the 3 life off the life link, you pay 3 mana at your end step and draw 3 cards. I mean, 1 mana for 1 card is a great rate. Like it just is. That's fantastic. So yes, there's some hoops you need to jump through. You do need to be gaining life, but if you have gained life, all of a sudden you can just dump any excess mana into cards, which is kind of nice because in when the times when you need cards most is when you have excess mana to burn.
Mm-hmm.
So So I think this is actually a pretty well balanced card. It's neat. Obviously, in Commander, it's really solid. If you're doing any
Right.
kind of like Bant life gain Commander situation,
And you have a
she's
ton of
great.
mana laying around, or
Yeah,
like you somehow
exactly.
got your infinite combo with life too, or something like a
Hmm.
devoted druid type situation. You're just like, oh yeah,
Yep.
just draw my deck and, or draw most of my deck, play it, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Stuff can get silly.
Yep.
But we're also in a situation where like Selesnya humans is, I think, an archetype that's going to be supported moving forward. And that does include some life gain creatures and lifelink creatures. I mean, we have the Intrepid Adversary has lifelink, Extraction Specialist has lifelink. You have cards like Lunarch Veteran that whenever a creature enters, you're gaining a life. So I can see some life gain synergies combined with like a mid-range human plan, and Shanna being able to just take one or two extra mana at the end of your turn and just turn it into one or two cards here and there. I mean, if you can consistently draw one or two additional cards a turn, you're living the dream. And I think this card lets you do that in the right deck.
100%. Next card here, pretty decent, I think, is going to be a card that's going to replace some cards that left and or get played in a lot more variety of decks. We have Lanimore, Green Widow, 2 colorless green for 4/3 Reach Trample Spider. It has Domain, 7 colorless and a green. Return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It gains if this permanent will leave the battlefield exiled instead of putting it anywhere else. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. I think it's really cool how with just a Triumph it reduces the cost by 3. So then it just makes it like a 4 mana 4/3 with Reach and Trample. I don't know. I think this card's pretty strong. It has recursion and the stats on it are pretty good. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even without that domain recursion ability, I think the card is okay. The moment you add that recursion into the mix, it becomes really solid. I think this is going to slot. I mean, granted, with domain, you're going to be wanting run. You're going to want to run at least one type of triome. So you're looking at probably a 3-color deck to really take advantage of that. However, we do still have a 4/3 reach trampler for 3 in the mix here. So the first thing that I thought of with this card was Old Growth Troll. Granted, Old Growth Troll was very much on the mono green list. It had 3 green pips in the mana value, so it was very clear that that's designed to be, or in the mana cost, I should say. It's very clearly designed to be in the mono green list, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
4/4. Here we have a 4/3, so that 3 toughness is relevant. But it also has reach, so I think this is it's just great on stats. I think in limited, this is a slam dunk. Like absolutely, just grab it. Like it's gonna wreck. It's gonna wreck your board. Your opponent's board
Yeah, it can
pretty
come back no
consistently,
matter what.
and it can
Like
come back.
even for
Yep.
8 mana, or I guess it's going to be 7 mana because at least you'll be playing one color. If you're
Right.
playing
Yeah. But
two, it's just 6 mana.
even for
That feels pretty good, right?
yeah, exactly. Even for 7, just pull it back if
Yep.
you do get it back once. I mean, it's intriguing. It's a cool card. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty strong. I think it'll see play in somewhere in constructed.
Hmm.
Next card's pretty cool. Definitely for the red mage. Kelden Flame Sage, 2 colorless red, 2/3 human shaman, has enlist. Which, if you don't know, whenever this card attacks, you can tap a creature that's already been out for a while, that isn't summoning sick, and then you add that creature's power to this creature's power. So whenever this card attacks, look at the top X card of your library, where X is this card's power. You may exile an instant sorcery card with mana value X or less from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. I actually think this card, it's weird. Like, the card feels really powerful. I just don't know where it goes, right?
Hmm.
At least right
Yeah.
now, we don't know what deck it would go in. But
Exactly.
it's really
Yeah.
powerful. Like, the bigger it gets, if you're playing this in like your Gruul deck and then you tap the Vigor, this card gets 8 power, and then you can cast, I don't know, a Magma Opus. Like, maybe I'm just like
Right.
in Christmas land with this scenario, but what do you think, Hammer?
No, that's 100% the kind of thing I was thinking of too. Because it's like, okay,
Um,
if I tap a Shakedown Heavy or, like I mentioned before, a Yargle to really just get this Keldon Flame Sage gigantic, we attack, we get to look at a ton of cards. And like, what is the. I mean, could we get
All
this to a
Runs
point where we
Epiphany.
can cast an Explosive Singularity off the top with this? Because that would be freaking tight. I don't know.
Ooh,
Like,
yeah.
I feel like there's something here, right? We are losing Magma Opus, which is a shame because a lot of the Prismari stuff from Strixhaven, Magma Opus clearly being like chief among them, like a lot of those spells were just awesome for this type of
Hmm.
effect. Just go grab a big dumb sorcery and let it rip. And obviously Magma Opus was just the best for that. So yeah, we're gonna be there's a void there that we need to fill with something. But even then, like we have the Invoke cycle from Kamigawa. Those are all 5 mana spells that do really cool things, and you'd only have to enlist a 3-power creature in order to have Kelden Flamesage spin into
Underdog.
one of those.
You can get an underdog in there on
Mm-hmm.
turn 2, then play this on turn 3, and then turn 4. You can pump up the Flame Sage at your top 5, and then get to cast and Invoke Despair.
Yeah, if you had an Invoke
Uh,
Despair off that, oh
ooh,
boy, that would
yeah.
be nasty. So I mean, there's play here. Like there's definitely play
I
here. This
think
thing is,
there could be a
yeah,
version with the in the Explorer, maybe with the Opus, All Runs Epiphany. Maybe just take some extra turns while you're at it. Maybe with like the dragon as well, the Lorehold dragon,
yep,
Bellamachus.
oh
I don't know.
yeah,
I think this card is like a over the top janky card, but I also kind of take this card a little bit serious. I mean, the thing is that no matter what, you're looking at your top 2 cards, and you're
mm-hmm.
getting to cast a card for free. Yeah, this card is, I don't know. I think this card's really, really powerful all over the place. Not
Yeah,
only in like the meme style, but I think for red decks, like this is the type of card you want. It's a card that's going to attack for a lot of damage, draw you cards, and you get to cast them for free. The more I read this card, it's starting to feel like a Rafine type situation for me where I'm like, yeah,
mm-hmm.
this card, the more I read it, the better it gets, right?
Yeah. Well, when I'm looking at this card, I'm getting kind of Arcane Bombardment vibes, but I learned my lesson from Arcane Bombardment
Hey, that card's
because
sweet.
that card's amazing. Like I was sleeping on that card hard. Like I remember
Oh,
thinking
yeah.
like it'll be good in Commander, but could it really be good in Constructed? It's like yes, yes, it can.
Yeah, I can.
Um, it's legit. Well, I hadn't taken into account the fact that like if it fires once, you're screwed. You know, like whereas with Keldon Flamesage, this could very much be the same situation because we're talking about like yeah, if you enlist a tenacious underdog, attack with the Keldon Flamesage as quickly as turn
4.
as quickly as turn what 4,
Yeah.
you could be attacking and spinning into 5 drops. You could be hitting, if you hit that one game that goes underdog, flame sage into invoke despair, your opponent is never going to forget that game.
Or like a burn
Like,
down the house. You get to cast a burn
burn
down the house, get
burn down
some
the house could absolutely
devils.
been there. Yep, 100%.
I just think this card's strong. Like in older formats, man, you just hit like a 2-drop removal spell. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
in standard now, we're gonna have lightning strike. You just attack with this, and it can already hit like a lightning strike if it's in your top 2. Um,
you can do
yeah,
a
I
lot
just
worse than
think,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really strong. I think that there's a lot more potential for this card overall in a lot of different decks. I'm expecting to see it in standard. I'm expecting to see it in older formats. I'm telling you, it's just like, man, it sucks that iteration's gone. But can you imagine attacking and hitting an expressive off of this or something like
So much
that? Feels
value.
pretty
Oh my
good
goodness.
too. Like,
Yeah.
or you just attack and you hit a fatal push.
That's all I need. Yeah.
This card's nuts.
Sometimes
I
that's
think this
exactly what
card's
you need.
nuts, man. I think this
Yeah.
card is. I don't know if anyone else is hype on it or if they're sleeping on it, but I think this card's strong.
Yeah.
We've talked
Whenever
about
you
it for a
see
bit, but
whenever
I
you
think
see
it's
the words
strong.
without paying its mana cost on a card, pay attention, and we have it here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
It's
any two
legit.
drop. I mean, I can go Kumanos into Robber the Rich into this, and then on turn 4, right? Like I could just attack, pump this up, and then yeah, I don't know. It gets pretty nutty. It gets pretty
And
nutty.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it can hit fast and hard. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely be on the lookout for Keldon Flamesage. Our next card is one that's maybe a little bit more exciting for Commander, but there's a possibility that it could get played in all kinds of formats too, considering that it adds mana of any color. We've got Plaza of Heroes. It's just a land. Tap it for a colorless. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend it only to cast legendary spells. Add 1 mana of any color among legendary permanents you control. And then that's another tap. And then 3, tap it, exile it. Target legendary creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I think it's a really strong card for specific combos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe like cannon combos, or I forget what the other card is that goes in that deck. The blue card that you can tap it and get to cast a card out of your graveyard. That's like an artifact. But
Oh, Emery. Yeah.
yeah, Emery
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like the first things I thought of for this. But or maybe even like the human deck wants to play it because in the human deck maybe you got your Thalias or your General Kudros, and you're able to cast those, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe give them indestructible. What do you think about this card?
I think it's dope. The fact that it enters untapped is insane. I think this is like so. I mean, the obvious application if you're in Commander, like this card looks like it's so perfect for Commander that if Wizards does not give this the Soul Ring treatment and put it in every single Commander precon from here until the end of freaking time, they will be missing out because, and it's going to be like a $200 card if they don't, because every Commander player on the planet will want this for every single one of their decks. It's that simple. It can tap to add, so it can tap to add mana of any color if it's being used to play a legendary spell. So obviously in Commander, if you're bringing your Commander out, it's a command tower. And then once your commander's out, it is you can tap it for any color. So obviously in Commander, in 60 card formats, so in standard, we are going into a format where legendary spells are going to be more popular because Dominaria is the plane of legends. You know, they've confirmed that there will be a legendary creature in every pack of this set, like there was with our last visit to Dominaria. So they're clearly buffing up a legends theme. And on top of that, if you look at the number of legends that on average that are printed into standard sets, ever since the advent of Commander, that amount has increased just gradually over time. So a lot of cards are incidentally legends these days. So I mean, when you're looking at your decks, basically what it comes down to, I know for me, when I'm brewing a deck on Arena, I'm going to be looking at my creature suite. And if I have two or three different legends in that deck, I'm probably gonna put Plaza Heroes in it. Like it's really that simple.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's really good. I think there's potential for it to really get played in standard,
Mhm.
and obviously in commander, or maybe even potentially some older formats. It just only gets stronger. I think it's a card that I think we're gonna see it. I think we're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
see it. It's potentially being underrated maybe right now, but I think we're gonna see it for sure.
Mhm.
Our next card on the list is one that was actually a little bit of a letdown, if I do say so myself. So we have Karn Living Legacy. What a name. And
Right?
then, what a card. 4 colorless, 4
Makes
legendary
an impression.
Planeswalker
Yeah.
Karn. Comes in with 4 loyalty, +1, create a tap Power Stone token. It's an artifact with tap, add a colorless. This mana can't be spent to cast a non artifact spell. -1, pay any amount of mana, look at that many cards from the top of your library, then put one of them into your hand. The rest on the bottom in a random order. -7, you get an emblem with tap and untap artifact control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target. Man, I just, you know, Elspeth's better than this card, and I feel like we trashed on Elspeth quite a lot.
We
But
did.
I actually think Elspeth is going to get played a lot more in this new standard. But Karn, unfortunately, I know they're not definitely not the same card. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of when we compare planeswalkers that don't protect themselves and maybe like what their ultimate value ends up doing, at least Elspeth can maybe minus to get a card off the top of the deck and put
Mhm.
something into play to protect itself. Karn, on the other hand, is literally just making Power Stone tokens that you just stare at and then watch as your Karn dies to just anything that your opponent's doing. Maybe if your Karn survive, maybe they leave it alone because they don't think it's good, and then you get the down tick and look at your top X cards and maybe grab a card if you're willing to, I don't know, once again time walk yourself to give your opponent the game. And then the emblem's really strong. Like the emblem's just nutty because I mean, obviously, if you get the emblem and you have a bunch of artifacts out in Commander or I don't know somehow in Standard, maybe in like the artifact deck in Explorer. You don't even. This card sucks. I don't want to defend it. I'm tired of like just reading it and being like, look at the abilities. There's a chance that someone plays it one time in history somewhere in a deck on a kitchen table. I don't know, Ham. This card is very disappointing. I was expecting like a card that was just going to be insanely busted and maybe made some more
Mhm.
constructs or untapped some artifacts, did some things. This is ooh.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think what's there are a number of factors that are leading to this reaction because you're seeing stuff like if you're on Twitter or looking at other YouTube creators reviewing this card. I mean, heck, I even put out a video where I even had my me doing a dumpy face looking at this card because it's awkward. Like it does not read well. I think Card Living Legacy is going to be better than a lot of people think. But at the same time, that's not really hard because we have people saying it's one of the worst planeswalkers ever printed. So that's a pretty low bar to clear. Um, the -7 is incredible. The emblem's awesome
Mm-hmm.
in any kind of artifact deck, but you shouldn't judge a planeswalker off their emblem if they have one. Unless of course you're looking at the 6 mana Chandra that just like upticks to create emblems, but that's its own thing. Um, at the end of the day, don't judge a planeswalker off their ultimate because you're not going to see it
It's
95%
less
of the
likely
time.
that it's actually going to get to the ultimate, unless
Hmm.
it's like one of those abilities that's like they don't really have like an ultimate. Like Wandering Emperor is the best example, where obviously, yeah, you're going to get to the -2 because it already
Yeah, of
comes in
course.
with 3. But that's
Hmm.
also not like, oh, when this comes in, exile all tapped creatures and you gain life, right? Like, it'd also
Yeah.
just be like a ridiculous settle the wreckage, and then we'd be looking at that ultimate a lot more. But
Hmm.
Karn's is a real ultimate, but the rest of the card isn't good enough, right? We talk about
No.
planeswalkers a lot, and specifically on this channel, when we talk about planeswalkers, they have to protect themselves. They
Hmm.
have to generate some kind of card advantage or cheat on mana. And that's kind of like what ends up happening. And this card isn't even really creating any card advantage. It's quote unquote potentially cheating on mana by making an artifact like a mana rock. And maybe there's some card advantage considering it's only a -1, but then you also have to spend your own mana to do it. It's just,
That's the thing. Yeah.
oh, this card just feels
that
so
that's yeah, and
gross.
so the +1 when you first read it, I know when I first read that +1, I was like, okay, so it gives me a mana rock, but when am I going to use the mana? And it looks like when you first read it, it says you can't cast non-artifact spells. Okay, most of my spells are probably not going to be artifacts, just in general.
Unless
So
I'm
there's
that
that.
deck, yeah.
However, you can use that mana to activate abilities. So that's the thing. Or to pay into triggered abilities like the -1. But at the end of the day, like you have to have a ton of mana to be able to pump into that -1 to make it worthwhile. And once you have all that mana, there's so many better things to be doing with it, and there are better ways to tutor. So the issue that I see with Karn is that it wants to live in an artifact heavy deck, but we don't have a lot of payoffs right now for artifact heavy decks. Like we've talked about it before that we have some cool support pieces for artifacts in like Joyra, Tezzeret, Reality Heist. Like there are some pieces, and there are some really good artifacts out there too. We have Bankbuster, we have the Weatherlight, we have all kinds of stuff like, and even freaking Pithing Needle could be coming in on the sideboard. I mean, we've got stuff to, decent artifacts. But what we don't have is like a cranial plating, that gives like +1/+0 for each artifact you control. We don't have the Arcbound Ravager. We don't have the payoff for having all these artifacts down. Like that just doesn't exist in standard right now. And the problem is in older formats where some of those payoffs do exist, the options at the planeswalker slot, even at the 4-drop slot, you have Karn the Great Creator, which is just head and shoulders above
Yeah, that card's
Karn
just
Living
nutty,
Legacy.
right?
It's not even close. Like, and we also have Karn Scion of Urza. Again, so much
Way
better.
better. It makes
Like,
constructs. It draws you
yeah.
cards like just without needing to spend mana. Like,
So
ah,
Karn Living Legacy wants to be the standard version of those cards that fits into the artifact themed deck. The problem is we don't have the artifact themed deck in standard to put them in. And the moment we go to older formats, we just have better options. Yeah.
yeah,
So
poor Karn.
it's a bummer
Wish it
because
got a
like
better card. Maybe there'll be a better
the
card in the next set. Who knows?
maybe. And again, I don't think it's the worst planeswalker ever, but at the same time, this is gonna be even at the mythic rare slot, you're gonna be in a month after release, you're gonna be able to pick this up for $1, and I think that's about right.
Yep. So next card is a little bit more of an aggressive type card that we've actually seen quite a bit throughout Magic's history, and I'm actually surprised that it's at uncommon. We have Cult Conscript, 1 black for a 2/1 Skeleton Warrior. Enters the battlefield tapped. Black and a colorless. Return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only if a non-skeleton creature died under control this turn. So you can't loop them with each other, but in Explorer, in Standard, I'm expecting to see this card get played, right? In any aggressive strategy that has black in it.
Oh, sure. And on top of that, it has 2 power for 1, so all of a sudden, cards with casualty 2 on them, for like 2 or 3 mana, all of a sudden are available to you, which is kind of nice. I can't think of any right off the top, but like it's nice to have those options. Yeah, I think if you care about power, if you care about, getting in for early damage, that's totally going to see play. And the fact that you can recur it means that in sacrifice decks where maybe it's your only skeleton, because what other skeletons would you have, especially in standard? We've talked about a lot of sacrifice synergy that's out there right now. And this could absolutely slot into that deck, no problem. And it's just, I mean, I remember Gutter Bones being a phenomenal card, when it was released. And looking at Cult Conscript is like, it's kind of doing the same thing.
It's a
And
potential card in cat oven.
yeah,
The
you can
cat
potentially
already
slot it
brings
into
it
cat
back
oven.
off of the oven. I mean, it's just a threat that just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
If you have more sack outlets, it just yeah. I mean, I think this card's really strong. Honestly, I think
Yeah.
this and Tenacious Underdog can end up being like best friends.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I
Well,
think this
and
card's gonna get played.
yeah, absolutely. And in that situation, you're putting 2 power on board on turn 1 and then 3 power on board on turn 2 in mono black. Maybe mono black aggro will be a thing. Who knows?
And then later on, you're blitzing the Underdog, and then you can get back your conscripts whenever it dies.
Absolutely.
Or
Well,
it's not. It also isn't like a non-token or anything like that. So even the Kiki Jiki,
yep.
the Fabled the Mirror Breaker tokens when they sack, you
Well,
can get back the Cult conscripts.
absolutely. And it's also worth noting you can activate this at instant speed if your opponent blows up one of your things, or if you block one of your opponent's creatures coming in and your blocker dies, you can bring the conscript back and then go to your turn, untap it, you're off to the races.
Yep.
So cool card.
Yeah, strong card. Definitely gonna see it get played, I think. Next
Mhm.
card on the list, we have Defiler of Faith. So we've got more Defilers screwing up standard HamHocks. 3 colorless, 2 white. Phyrexian Human, 5/5 with Vigilance. As an additional cost to cast a white permanent spell, you can pay 2 life. They cost a white mana less. This effect reduces only the amount of white mana you pay, so it's the same as all the other ones. Whenever you cast a white permanent spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. This card is also another card that's yet bananas. Every Defiler seems absolutely freaking bananas. This card, it doesn't have flying or anything. Vigilance is pretty decent. It's a good on rate. 5 mana, 5/5 Vigilance, sure. But then you're just like, here's all my free cards. Like, I don't know.
Here are all
this
those
card's
1-drops that I'm sitting on, and I'm just gonna poop them all out of the
I
battlefield.
want to make a bunch of 1/1 white soldiers. So like, if they board wipe, you just play this and then maybe get like 1 card down. And now you have 3 threats on the battlefield, and then yeah, it's another. Once again, I don't know how many of these you want in your deck, but it's obviously a powerful card. I think it's gonna get played. I think they're all gonna get played at one point, whether or not they're all played at once, or I don't know. I mean, these are the types of cards that keep the mono decks around, right? Like these types of payoffs. If you have other ways of maybe creating like a card advantage engine, maybe your creature's dying. And you drawing some cards to kind of keep these flowing. Like these all kind of like remind me. They all have like a great henge feel to them, where they just make your cards better. They reduce your costs if you need them to, and then on top of that, when they come, when you're casting your spells, you're getting something. And another thing to note about these Defilers is your cards don't have to resolve. Right. These are cast triggers. So no matter what, you're getting these 1/1 soldiers. No matter what, if you got the Defiler Vigor, you're getting the counters on your creatures, right?
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Like it's absolutely incredible. Yeah, bananas is the right word, I think. And on top of that, it's a human. So in decks that care about human synergies, like you can hit Sigarda on 4 and a Defiler of Faith on 5.
Yeah, nice.
Come on, like it's gonna be absurd.
Good.
Granted, the tokens that you're creating are not humans, so that's worth noting. But still,
you play Adeline for 2 mana. And it already gets like super huge, right? It's already getting a two bonus from the Defiler and the token it makes.
Yeah, that's insane.
And then you attack with the Defiler, get another token. Yeah, this card just seems. The mid-range magic is definitely going to be a thing here. I think we're going to be hitting some big mid-range. I think the aggro decks are going to be going really big, it looks like, because Defiler Faith and the Defiler Vigor make it look like that. But yeah, I think this card's going to be great. I expect to see it. Like I said, I don't know what number we're going to see it in because it is, once again, a 5-drop. But Ham, safe to say you're probably going to see this card?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, yeah, and I think you're exactly right. In standard, turns 4 and 5, stuff's going to get real. And yeah, we're going to see it. And this is definitely going to be, going to be in that mix.
Our next card here is one that I think is going to fill the slot in a deck that potentially needs a 1-drop, which usually kind of determines whether or not we'll see a red deck. So we have Phoenix Chick. 1 red, 1/1, flying haste, can't block. It's a Phoenix. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you can pay double red. If you do, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, I think this card's great. It's 1 mana, 1/1 flyer with haste. It already comes in dealing damage essentially in a red deck, in an aggressive deck, and then on top of that, if you have a couple red when you're attacking with 3 more things, it just keeps coming back. And it has flying,
Hmm.
so it has evasion, has haste, comes in attacking later. It's recursive. Yeah, what do you think, Ham? Pretty decent
I
card,
think
right?
this card's awesome. It's everywhere you want to be. I mean, in the red deck, red mages. Well, I mean, there is. It's funny. Every color has the moment when you do the thing as a new player and you realize, oh, I see why people like this. And for me, with the red deck, it was the first time I played a Raging Goblin on the play. It's like, oh, so you don't even get to go yet. I'm gonna play a mountain tap Raging Goblin, dome you for one.
Oh, I remember playing Raging Goblins so
Like, it
much.
feels so good when you hit him for that one damage and then you let them draw their first card. Like, I'm attacking, like, you haven't even played the game yet. I'm already hitting you. Like, it feels so good. And Phoenix Chick is just so much better than Raging Goblin. It's not even funny. Like, the fact that it can't block is a real downside for late in the game. But if you're playing mono red aggro and standard and you have to block with your creatures, something has gone wrong anyway.
Yeah, you might just be losing.
Yeah, you're probably already losing. So that is irrelevant on this card 90% of the time. And with other Phoenixes, like, we've seen a number of Phoenixes throughout the years. It's a very common, like, fantasy creature, so it makes sense. And they always vary in how good they are depending on how easy it is to pull them out of the graveyard. Cards like Everquill Phoenix from Ikoria, like, you had to mutate onto it, and then you got a token that you could crack to bring a Phoenix back.
Oh my
It was like,
goodness, this is like it comes with an instruction booklet, Ham. We don't need
yeah, it
that.
was weird. Like, it was very weird, and it wasn't very good. And I've tried using it. It was like, and you end up with like 5 or 6 feather counters lying around, being like, "What the hell am I going to do with these?" And anyway, it's
Yeah, it's
like,
not that
it's
great.
not great. And like, that was an example of one that was okay, I guess, in that meta, but it wasn't. It didn't seem, it didn't really see play in any meaningful archetype. Like, you needed to be in mutate, you needed to have red. It just wasn't a thing. But with this, it's just you need to be attacking. I was going to do that anyway. Like, sweet. So yeah, if you're attacking with 3 or more creatures, and you got 2 mana, and when you recur it, it comes back as a 2/2.
Yeah, it comes back as a 2/2, which is pretty
It comes back
decent.
even bigger. I
Yeah,
love
it
it.
comes back even bigger. I think it's really good with Kumanos. Like, you can play
Mm-hmm.
Kumanos, play this. Now it's a 2/2 with haste. It flies. It's pretty good. Going to chip away. And then later, when your Kumanos flips, if the chick died, then now you have an extra creature to kind of help get in there and to make that 3
Mm-hmm.
creature thing a possibility. I'm not sure how good it'll be in older formats, but I think for standard, it's a type of card that red decks want.
100%. Well, and we've also got, the fact that when you bring it back, it comes back with a counter, like Thundering Raiju's trigger is going to care about that, so,
Ooh, that's true. Yeah, Golo.
it comes back modified, so
Or
that might be a thing.
is
Yeah,
that the
it's
goblin, right? Golo's the name. It's not Golos, right? Or Goro,
Goro
right?
Goro. Oh, yes, the little goblin that gives
Yeah.
haste to everything.
Yep.
Yeah, the little guy. And yeah, if you're attacking with a modified creature, you can create the 5/5 dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That actually could have a home, and that'd be interesting. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a aggressive strategies. I think it'll be an aggressive red
Hmm.
decks, and if red deck wins, mono red type aggro deck is the thing, then this card's definitely gonna be one of the one drops you're gonna be wanting to throw in there.
Yeah,
Our
100%.
next our next card here is actually a pretty interesting uncommon that I wanted to include here because I kept reading it and it kept seeming a little bit better. So we have Founding
Hmm.
the Third Path on the screen. You might see it in a different language than English, but we have a translation here for you. So it has read ahead. If you don't know read ahead, choose a chapter. Start with that many lore counters, so you can just skip ahead to that chapter, and then essentially it keeps triggering like it would normally. You may cast. So the first chapter, you may cast an instant sorcery spell with mana value 1 or 2 from your hand, without paying its mana cost. So automatically, you pay 2 mana. You're just going to get to cast another card out of your hand for free. The second chapter, target player mills 4 cards. Third chapter, exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. You copy it, and you can cast a copy. So essentially, you're going to need to play a card out of your graveyard, but you still have to spend the mana on it, which is fine. Um, I'm getting like Snapcaster vibes off of this, but I'm also getting. We talked a little bit off of the video about this, which is like, even if you're just like, all right, founding, lightning strike your card, and then you get to mill some cards out of your deck, maybe mill some good cards from your opponent's deck, and then you get to cast again your lightning strike on turn 4 or whatever. I feel like that's not really that bad. Or if you got some draw spells, maybe you milled some really good cards you get to cast on turn 4. I mean, what do you think, Ham? I think there's potential for this card. Is how I feel about it, right?
Oh, 100%. Well, I mean, and the other cool thing about this is that read ahead gives you so much flexibility. I think this is an excellent read ahead design because you're exactly right. If you have a 2-drop in your hand already, just so yeah, if you're sitting with a lightning strike or I mean, there are a whole bunch of, 2 mana spells of one kind or another. If you're sitting with a 2 mana spell in your hand already, you play Founding of the Third Path, you just get the spell. So it's basically free. Like, setting it up is effectively free in that circumstance. And then if you care about your graveyard, and again, if we're looking at, situations where we care about delirium, or we're trying to set up that Tolarian terror that we were looking at earlier that cares about the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, that mill 4 is very real.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are some other cards that care about the number of creatures in your graveyard. Like, this can help you get there. As somebody who loves playing reanimate strategies, like, I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be building some kind of Sultai Reanimator deck with this. It's going to happen, and it's going to be awesome. And then the third mode, which you can skip to. So if you don't have a spell in your hand that you want to cast with that first chapter, you just skip it and just go right to mill. If you already have the sorcery in your graveyard, like if it's late in the game and you rip this off the top, you have
It's
an
like a
instant
Snapcaster
sorcery
Mage.
in your graveyard that you need to just get back, whether that's to deal that last little damage to your opponent or to put some tokens on board or something, like whatever you need to do to get you back in the game or even win the game on the spot. 2 mana, read ahead to chapter 3, rip it, and you're good.
Yep.
You know,
Get
it's
that
yeah,
board
it's just like a
wiped.
Snapcaster Mage. Really cool card.
Yeah, I think it's really strong. I think we're gonna see it. I'm not sure what deck. Control decks, maybe.
Maybe,
Decks that
yeah.
obviously rely heavily on spells. I think it's a really, really powerful uncommon, honestly. And we've
Hmm.
seen sagas get played a good amount, and this card isn't necessarily like, let's say, a card advantage card per se, but it has a lot of value attached with it, where you already get the, it's not just a 2 mana do nothing. Obviously, you
Hmm.
have to have a good card in your hand to want to play with it, but in the right deck, yeah, you're almost always going to have that instant sorcery. If not, you're right. Let's just read ahead. Let's just mill. Okay, now we
Hmm.
milled something we can play on turn 3. So, yeah, I think this card has tons of potential. I expect to see it
Yeah,
for sure.
I dig it.
Our next card is actually an interesting one that we've seen in Alchemy to a certain degree, but we haven't seen the full effect yet in Standard. Now, it's not the same type of card, but so this one here specifically, we have Temporary Lockdown, a colorless 2 white enchantment. Whenever this card enters the battlefield, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until this card leaves the battlefield. Ham, does this card kind of remind you of something else?
It does. It gives me vibes of an alchemy card that for a minute there, like straight up kept me up at night until I was like, how about I just not play alchemy anymore? Um, And that is Divine Purge. If you have played Alchemy, you've probably played against Divine Purge. That card is savage. Now, with Divine Purge, what happens is it exiles all creatures and artifacts, I believe, with mana
Yeah.
value 3 or less. Now, with Temporary Lockdown, you're grabbing each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. And with Divine Purge, you can theoretically replay them, but we all know that never works well. But with Temporary Lockdown, instead, you're getting more of a Banishing Light style effect where they're exiled until Temporary Lockdown leaves the battlefield. But that's all non-land permanents
Tokens.
with mana value 2 or less. Tokens is a big one. So much like what we were saying with Cutdown, I think in older formats where 1 and 2 drops become, are key.
All the Moxes just gone.
Yeah, actually, that wow, I hadn't even thought about that, but you might be right. Temporary Lockdown might straight up see vintage play
Or legacy play, even
or
because you get
legacy
rid of a
play.
lot of things. I mean, it gets rid of the Dark Depths
Blockers.
token.
Mm-hmm.
The
Oh,
Dark Depths
totally.
token's just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't target. The main thing is that this card doesn't target.
Right.
So essentially, like, you can get rid of things that don't have like hexproof or have hexproof, things like that. I mean, I think this card's super strong. I don't think it's as crazy as the first time I read it because I thought it was just like Divine Purge. I think for
Mm-hmm.
Standard, it's probably going to be more of like a cyber card.
Yeah, I think
Against
so too.
specific strategies, like anything that's making blood tokens, anything that's making creature tokens in general. I think this card's definitely going to hose that. And as
Mm-hmm.
the formats get older, I think that you'll see this card every once in a while in sideboards as a way to answer specific decks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like the token, same thing, token strategies, artifact strategies. This gets rid of the scissor deck pretty much. You can just play this, and
Oh, sure. Yep.
the ornithopters and all that kind of go away. Even the hammer deck in modern, essentially,
Unfortunately,
this
yep.
shoots down pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this card's great. I think
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gonna get played somewhere. Not always a main deck card for sure, but definitely a cyber card, depending on the metagame.
Yeah. Well, and it's similar. I mean, it's a massive portable hole. Like that's the comparison that you can't help but draw because portable hole
It's
was
a massive
one thing.
hole.
This is a big old hole.
That's a big
Yeah,
ol' hole.
yeah, because portable hole was remove one thing with mana value 2 or less. This is just remove everything. Like, yeah, really cool, really powerful card, and I mean, it's effectively a board wipe for 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I can absolutely see I can imagine control mages sideboarding this in against like that, if a mono red aggro deck becomes part of the meta, running Phoenix Chick and Kumano faces Kakazan, um, and presumably some good, the bloodthirsty adversary. Like I could totally see temporary lockdown coming in as an answer to some of that early aggression.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I
Mhm.
expected to see play for sure. Our next card is actually an uncommon. We have Twinferno, colorless red. Instant, you get to choose one. You can cast your next instant or sorcery spell. Or when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, you get to copy it. You may choose new targets. Or target creature control gains double strike until end of turn. It's a really interesting card because the decks that want this card, you kind of almost want it for both effects, depending on the type of creatures that you're running in your deck. But overall, it gives decks that aren't necessarily playing blue for the iteration to essentially get to copy some of their spells. What do you think, Ham?
Yeah, I dig it. I think this card is actually really good. I think the fact that it gives you a choice, like with other modal spells throughout Magic's history, you usually have to pay a little bit more mana to have the flexibility on the card. With this one, however, you're getting two effects that usually are valued at about 2 mana, and you get to pick between them. Now, it's very possible that certain decks you're only going to want one mode of this. If you're doing like an Is It Spellslinger situation, that double strike mode may not be relevant at all. But if you're in a mid-range situation, even in that first game, maybe you need to double up a burn spell or a bounce spell. Maybe you need to, or maybe your 4 or 5 drop just needs to crash in for double damage this turn, and you can do either at instant speed. The amount of flexibility and the ease of casting at 1 in a red is something that kind of blows my mind. Like we have Galvanic Iteration in the format, that's not going anywhere, but that's blue red for being able to, for this effect, essentially. Granted, that one has flashback, so that's a different ball of wax. I'm not
It's a
saying that
little bit better
Twinferno,
in terms of card
yeah,
advantage because you're able
yeah,
to
I'm not saying
do
Twinferno is better than Galvanic
things,
Iteration,
but this
but
fits into the decks that Galvanic Iteration doesn't fit into.
exactly, yeah.
And on top
Well,
of
and
that,
the
the
fact
double
that
strike is huge, right?
and the double strike can be absolutely be massive. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a cool card. I think it'll see some play in certain archetypes. I'm intrigued.
For sure. Now, our next card, though, is definitely a card that I expect to see play in standard and potentially some older formats as well. We have Weatherlight completed. Oh, it hurts my soul to see the Weatherlight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we beat the Phyrexians before Ham, and now we don't, and it just.
Yeah, they're back.
Oh, I feel
It's
so
happening.
bad, the Weatherlight. But two
Mm-hmm.
colorless, it's a legendary artifact vehicle for a 5/5 with flying. As long as this card has 4 or more Phyrexian counters, or Phresis, sorry if I say it wrong.
Phyresis? I think it's Phyresis. I could be wrong. Yeah.
Phyresis, give me my Rhesus.
Yeah.
Phyresis pieces counters on it. It's a Phyrexian creature in addition to its other creature types, or to its other types. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a Phyresis counter on Weatherlight completed, then draw a card. If it has 7 or more counters on it, if it doesn't, scry 1. Sorry if I butchered this card, but essentially, it's a 2 mana 5/5 that kind of just sits there for a second. It's not a creature yet, so it needs 4 more counters to be a creature. And then on top of that, whenever a creature you control dies, you put a counter on it, and then you draw a card if it has 7 or more. If not, you're scrying. So this card is really good protection against board wipes. It can
Mm-hmm.
come down on a curve early, and it's really good in like sacrifice type strategies. So if you have this down and your opponent board wipes, you automatically get to 5/5, and then you get a scry a bunch. And if it has 7 or more, you just draw cards. So yeah, I mean, Ham, I expect to see this card get played. I'm really intrigued to see where it ends up getting played.
Oh, 100%. I'm absolutely expecting to see this card get played all over the place. I'm right there with you when it comes to like a couple of days ago I saw like I think it was a leaked picture of the Weatherlight from this set on Twitter, and I was like, no, no, they wouldn't do that. There's no way.
Not my Weatherlight.
Not my Weatherlight, exactly, but here we are. It happened, you
Don't
know?
do me like that.
It's funny, like a Johnny, whatever, but the Weatherlight, no. Like, I'm kidding, of course, but
Oh, it hurts. Oh, I just.
it's tough. It
Oh,
does
it's a
it hurts
tough
because
hit,
yeah,
man.
we've been following the Weatherlight now for 30 years. I mean, like it's been a key piece of Magic's lore for so long, and so to see Phyrexia twist it does suck. That said, this card is amazing, and I want it in all my decks. Like I like any deck with creatures in it, I want this at least as a 2 of because like
Your
I
cards are gonna
think
die. They're gonna die in
card
combat.
creatures are
They're
gonna
gonna
die.
die from your opponent's spells.
Now, obviously, if I'm sacrificing my stuff, 100% all day. This is at least a 3 of. If I'm sacrificing my own
Creatures are
stuff,
definitely dying there.
because creatures are 100% dying. But even in like, if I'm playing, say, a Selesnya human situation where I don't have any sacrifice effects on my side of the board, and my hope, my sincerest hope, is that all my creatures survives. However, I'm still going to be sitting on 7 or 8 creatures later in the game if all goes well, if everything goes according to plan. So if I have Weatherlight Completer just sitting there, it's just board wipe insurance at that point. Because if my opponent rips a Depopulate or a Meat Hook Massacre that's big enough to do some damage, I then get phenomenal card selection off the top of my library and probably some draws. And we're going to have a 5/5
And
flyer
a
that I get to
5/5.
untap
Yep.
with. So it puts them in a really bad situation where, like, if the Weatherlight Completed is sitting on the board, their board wipes look much less intriguing, you know? It's like, how badly do I want this? Because I'm going to be giving my opponent a lot by hitting it. So I think that's great. But yeah, in sacrifice decks, in any deck where you might Meat Hook Massacre your own board to deal damage to your opponent, this is like a no-brainer.
It's such
I
a
think this
black
card's
card. Like the
it is,
skeleton we
yeah.
saw, like the
Hmm.
underdog, where your cards are dying, you're just getting more value. Imagine like you get your underdog back, and this is already a 5/5, and then it gets its seventh or eighth counter just because the underdog dies, and you're drawing 2 cards. Like, yeah, it
It's
gets out of
insane.
control pretty quickly. I think this card it's colorless. You're gonna see
It's
it
colorless.
somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like Blitz. You sacrifice a creature. Your Kiki Jiki copies. You're
Ooh, yep.
sacrificing that creature. You've got Casualty. You're sacrificing those creatures. You've got,
Cat
I
oven.
mean, what else? And on top of that, I also want to point out one thing that we mentioned in our last video. Joyra, the new Joyra, can
Ooh, you can
play
play
artifacts for
Joyra and then play
free.
this for free. Yeah.
You can just tap Joyra, drop Weatherlight Completed for free, and then go about your turn. Like, so in a deck where Joyra fits, Weatherlight Completed can fit too. Just throwing that out there. I don't
100%.
know if that deck has support yet, but
It's looking like it.
just put that bug in your ear, everybody.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's something here. I think we're gonna see this card all over, and I know I'm gonna be grabbing it right away. I need this card in my life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. This card probably going to be a constructed all-star.
Hmm.
Our next card is actually quite interesting. It's uncommon. It's weird because I had to read it a few times, and I finally got sold on it for us to talk about it on this video. So we have Slimefoot Survey, 4 colorless and a green. Sorcery. It has domain. Search your library for up to 2 land cards that each have a basic land type. So it could be any of the triomes, essentially, from New Capenna. Put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Look at the top X card of your library, where X is the number of basic land types. Among lands you control, put one of them on top and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So essentially, this is a super ramp spell where it gets 2 lands, so it's a little bit expensive, but it gets 2 lands. It's guaranteed to fix your mana, and it's guaranteed to hit domain when you actually play it, because you can just go get 2 different types of triomes, and it'll give you your 5 basic land types. And then you look at your top 5 cards and essentially put anything that you don't need on the bottom and keep something good on top. Potentially the biggest downside of this card is that it's not putting it into your hand.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I still feel like it's a pretty strong card. Wouldn't you say, Ham, for like maybe like a mid-range ramp type strategy?
Yeah, I think that's the you got to be rampant. You got to be rampant to really make it work. And if the triomes weren't in the meta, I'd say this card is not well positioned. But since they are here, okay, there might be something to it. Because yeah, like you're saying, being able to get all 5 mana or all 5 basic land types on 2 lands right away. Now, I think like these types of effects, the closest thing I can think of are cards like Explosive Vegetation, where you get 2 lands for 4. This is, 2 basics for 4. This is somewhat similar, except, obviously we can grab tri-lands with it, which are awesome. Um, I don't know. I think ramp strategies is where you want to be because it does, at the end of the day, it does cost 5. So that's a bit of an issue. That said, if you want to, like, if you can cheat it out with a fight rigging or I don't know. Actually, there might be something with the flame sage that we were looking at earlier.
Ooh,
That might be fun.
yeah.
This might be one of those sorceries that you want to be spinning into with those types of effects, or fight. Like if I hit this with fight rigging, like sure, did I want the world spell? Yeah. Am I going to settle for Slimefoot's survey? Sure, it'll be okay. Um,
It lets us so that you actually get to cast your cards on time. Like no matter what, you
yeah.
get to cast your Titan. No matter what, you have the domain. So maybe there's you can combine this with some of the other domain cards that we've talked
Hmm.
about, or some of the cards that we're going to see in the future. I think that
Yeah.
it automatically giving you domain for 5 mana seems really strong.
Hmm.
I just don't know if the looking at your top X cards effect is going to be just as like is really what pushes this card over the top. If not, I like what you had stated before, where yeah, this card in limited is great. Like if you're doing domain, you take this
Hmm.
card every single time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you're trying to make a domain deck work in limited, this is exactly where you want to be. But yeah, in constructed, we'll see how good the domain payoffs are to see if it's worth it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I want to be ramping into this. If I'm waiting, like if this is my turn 5, I feel pretty bad. But if I can hit this on turn 3 or 4, like if I can hit this on turn 4 with a mana or two up for something, like all right, I'm not mad. And if I can hit this on turn 3, I'm living the dream. But that's
Oh yeah.
probably not going to be happening too much in standard. But fun thought, right?
um, I'm really, really excited about our next card. I can't begin to tell
Mm.
you how excited I am about this. So we have Urborg Lhurgoyf, colorless and a green. It's a creature Lhurgoyf. It has kicker, blue and or black. So you can pay either blue and you can also play the black or one or the other. It's a star and then slash star +1. If you've seen this before, this card looks familiar because it's a card that we're all familiar with. Now, this card's power is equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Folks, Tarmogoyf may be back in standard. It's back on the menu. I'm not sure how crazy powerful this card could end up being. Maybe it's more like a 2 or 3 of. A lot of the time you're not really going to be played on turn 2, unlike other formats where, you have a lot of ways to put you can fetch, already put in a card type. You can thought seize, that's a card type. Grab another card from your opponent, that's a card type. Now you've already got 3 in your Tarmogoyfs at 3/4 on turn 2, but I think Herbal Lhurgoyf is a card that just gets better as the game progresses, and not necessarily like an early threat. And on top of that, it fits into a few different types of strategies because you can kick it or quote unquote multi kick it,
Hmm.
and it will actually mill, and yeah, you'll get kind of feed itself in a way. The most you're going to spend on it's 4 mana, and the least you're going to spend on is 2 mana. Damn, I mean, I think this card's pretty strong, honestly. I mean, you can get a
Yeah.
lot more creatures in your graveyard than you can different card types. Like different card types, you have to build your deck around, but in an aggressive strategy, you playing a lot of creatures, and they're going to get board wiped. They're going to get removal spelled. They're going to die in combat, and what dies grows the goyf, right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. No, I dig it. And I think this is actually a really cool I dig this card on a lot of levels because yes, it does look similar to Tarmogoyf, but it also looks similar to the original Lhurgoyf as well. Because the original Lhurgoyf was um 2 green, and it had this ability, except it cared about all graveyards. So its power was equal to all creatures in all graveyards, and stuff just was that +1. So this is kind of an homage to that. You can still pay 4 for it if you're in, Sultai. But if you do, if yeah, you're what you're saying, it feeds itself. It can mill you up to 6 cards
Mm-hmm.
if you hit this on 4. And if a good chunk of those are creatures, this guy's gonna get pretty big. And throughout the course of the game, if you're in a strategy that cares about your graveyard, there are a lot of great cards that mill graveyards right now. You've got Death Bonnet Sprout. You've got Undead Butler. We have the Founding the Third Path that we were looking at earlier that could fit in this deck too. That can mill you 4 cards for 2. You know, it's not going to be hard for this Lhurgoyf to get really freaking big, really fast, I think. And I'm stoked. I can't wait to see because I mean it's funny when they brought Tarmogoyf to Historic recently. We kind of had this question of okay, is Tarmogoyf good enough for Modern Magic? And I don't think old school Tarmogoyf like it's still fun. You can still do some cool stuff, but it's not quite the powerhouse that it was in older formats. In Historic. But now we have the kind of this test of like, all right, this is kind of an updated Lhurgoyf. Can it hang? It'll be very interesting to see. And I think the way that they buffed it, the fact that it mills like on its own is sweet. I love that.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting card. I think
Yeah,
regular Tarmogoyf would be really great still in standard. I don't think it'd be anything too
potentially.
crazy. I think this
Yeah.
is a really interesting take on it, and I expect to see it get played. I just don't like I said, it's not like a 2-drop. I think with this card is actually
Mhm.
more like a 3-drop. So you're gonna see it in the Golgari mid range decks. You're gonna see it in Jund.
Yep.
Maybe like a Soul Tie because obviously it's both blue and black. You're
Yeah.
gonna
If
see in
Soul
those
has a
types of
thing, that's definitely in it.
strategies. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think I think this card's really good for fight rigging because it
Oh,
can
totally.
mill. Those decks play a lot of creatures, and on top of that, like those creatures end up dying a lot of the time. And then this card actually just gets bigger as the game keeps going, so it could eventually just trigger your fight rigging just by itself as well. So
Hmm.
I think that there's going to be a home for this card. Just not really sure where we'll see it, but definitely a card that's aimed towards constructed, and it also is like a callback to a lot of cards that we know and love.
Absolutely. I think the one card I want to pair this with is Stick Fingers. I
Oh
want to put
yeah,
Urborg, Lhurgoyf, and Old Stick Fingers together and just see what happens because I think that would get out of hand fast.
for sure. So yeah, definitely expect to see this card in constructed. Our next card is actually a pretty interesting take on an old, a lot of different cards that we've seen in the past, essentially mana rocks. So we have Timeless Lotus, 5 colorless, legendary artifact. This card enters the battlefield tapped, but you can tap it for Wooburg. That's right, one of each color. It taps for 5 mana. I think that this is one of the best mana rocks, at least expensive mana rocks they've ever printed. With Karn, I think it's what Karn, the Great Creator, right?
Hmm.
You get to untap it, so essentially you get to add 10 mana, and you can grab it out of the sideboard with the Karn as well and play it on curve in older
Yeah.
formats. In
What?
standard, I'm not sure where this card's really going to fit in, if it's going to fit in at all, but this card's a solid commander card for sure,
In
right? A plus
Oh,
commander card.
100%. Oh, in Commander, every 5-color Commander deck can use this, 100%. But on top of that, Teferi, who slows the sunset, is still in Standard, and that can untap artifacts. So I have a feeling that's what we're going to be seeing. We're going to see a lot of I don't know about Azorius control, but we might be seeing like 4 or 5 color like control situations where um Teferi, who slows the sunset, is going to be coming down on 4 into a timeless lotus on 5. The real question is, what's the payoff once you have the Wooburg? Once you have all 5, what do you do with it? Because if you
Hmm.
have a good 5-drop that you can follow that up with, then all of a sudden, you know, you're getting 10 mana worth of value on turn 5 in standard. Like that could get gross.
This plus Joyra is really good. Right,
Yep,
once you get Joyra up to a certain point, you're just making even more mana, and then you're able to do bigger and better things.
exactly. No, this is one of those cards that it's easy to look at. Like it's a mana rock. It costs 5. Is it really that good? It's like you're gonna see it. It's gonna be around. And right now, standard has become kind of a mid-range fest with a couple of aggro players and the best of one ladder really just doing their thing.
hmm
But it's a lot of mid-range right now. And this is one of those decks, or one of those cards rather, that can take a certain strategy from the mid game deep into the late game very fast. It can just get you an obscene amount of mana so quickly that there is going to be like
You
there,
can
there
pretty
will
much
be decks
cast
running
your
this.
Kami War off of this. Your
Hmm.
Kami War just is just one additional.
Pretty much, yeah. No,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
cast your
Kami
Niv
War,
Mizzet off of
yeah.
this. There's a lot of different things you can
Actually,
do with it.
I'm gonna need to take another look at the Defiler cycle now. Because they grant Phyrexian mana to all your permanents that have those colors in them. So if you have one Defiler down, Timeless Lotus plus 2 life gets you Kami War.
Oh wow, that's pretty good. Okay, all
There's
right, I
something
like
there. If
that.
if
I
if we
like
get a
that.
cheap if we get an inexpensive Defiler that can sneak in on the lower curve. So far I believe they've all been 5 drops. That might be true of the whole
Yeah, I think they're
cycle.
all probably 5 drops. If
Yeah,
there's one
but
that's cheaper, I'll be worried.
yeah, me too.
Immediately.
But this card is great. It's
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's gonna see all
you're gonna
kinds of
see it
play.
everywhere. You're gonna see it
You're
everywhere.
gonna see
It's
it absolutely everywhere.
just
Hmm.
a really strong mana rock. Like I said, one of the best mana rocks I think they printed for sure.
Yeah. Well, Gilded Lotus was one that I thought was fine
Love that
when it was
card.
first printed. But we've seen with effects that can untap artifacts, that thing gets out of hand super fast.
This one adds
And
5.
it's 5.
Yeah.
Like, you're locked into the colors, but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
So good.
Our next card is actually one that's pretty interesting. I really enjoy the artwork, and on top of that, it's a merfolk. So we have Badalion Mineslinger, colorless 2 blue for a 2/2 merfolk wizard. It has the kicker and or, which one is red colorless, the other one's green colorless. This card enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it for each time it was kicked. When this card enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature with power less than this card's power for as long as you control this card. So, just at 3 mana for a 2/2, you're essentially getting anything that's 1 power less. If you start to multi-kick it, which ends up being 5 to 7 mana if you want to do both, you get to take anything that's 6 or less. I don't know how I feel about this card. Like, I think it's more of a sideboard card, potentially, depending on if we end up maybe in like a Sower of Temptation type situation or Threads of Disloyalty. Essentially, all these types of cards that kind of give me this type of feeling with this, the effect that this card's doing. Where, it dies and then they get the card back, which is another big downside of it. A card that we didn't see get played too much, but was in the same vein, I believe, was Mind Flayer. I can't remember what the exact name of it was, but it was from the Baldur's Gate, right? The Dungeons and Dragons set.
No, it was Adventures of the Forgotten Realms.
Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. I'm so
Mind
sorry.
Flayer.
Yep.
3
yep,
blue,
yep, yep.
blue. No, you're good. Yeah, 3 blue, blue. Take control of a thing until Mind Flayer leaves the field. Yeah.
And Mineslinger has the potential to take something. It can't take everything, and I think that that's the biggest downside of this card, maybe, right?
Yeah, its limitations are very real. The fact that you can hit something, I mean, the fact that you can theoretically steal something from your opponent for 3 mana on a 2/2 body is pretty cool. Additionally, this is great if you're running. I think the Merfolk themed decks that have Merfolk lords in them are gonna be like pump
Ooh,
this
this card's
significantly.
really good.
Yeah,
You
because
just
then all
play
of
it
a
as like
sudden,
a 4/4, and it's just wow.
yeah, if you just
I
drop
didn't
it
even
for
think
3,
about that.
it comes in as a 4/4. You're stealing
Oh,
pretty much
off like
whatever
an
you
Ether
want.
Vial. Let's go, Ham. Let's bring Morfolk back. Let's go.
And that's exactly where I think this is gonna sing. I think that, well, Mindsinger. It's, this is where this card is really gonna pop, is in a dedicated Merfolk deck. I don't expect to see it in the standard because, like, I could see like a teamer ramp situation, but I don't think the payoff is that great. But like, yeah, like we're saying, if you can steal a 3 power something from your opponent for 3 mana, get out of here. I mean, that's absurd. And with those Merfolk decks, I don't know if if you haven't played against a Merfolk deck in Explorer or Historic, they are lightning fast. Like, it is shocking how quick they can close the game out, and half their creatures are unblockable. But the other half that are blockable, all of a sudden they're stealing your blockers with this, and it's gonna be rough, I think. But outside of that deck, I don't know how good this is gonna be. But in a blitz aggro deck full of Merfolk, this could be disgusting.
Yeah, in the Merfolk deck, this is like, a close to like A+ card probably for them. At
Yeah,
least
probably.
a really big addition. But for everything else, I mean, I'm the reason I had it that we're talking about in videos because I'm intrigued to see if it does get played, because we've seen this effect in a lot of different types of cards throughout Magic's history, and a lot of the time they kind of just get demoted to like the sideboard if not played at all. So, a card that has multi-kicker and has a chance to be a really big card that can take something, right? Because Mind Flayer will take something, but it's not a good attacker or blocker, right? Even at the 3/3 body, that's not that great. But this card has a chance to be a 4/4 or a 6/6, and then it's like, well, I mean, yeah, 6/6 pretty big,
Sure. Well, and if you're in Teamer, if you're doing Teamer ramp, I could totally see these as a 2, one of these as a 2 of, because yeah, 6/6 and you steal what's probably going to be your opponent's best thing.
Yeah, I like it.
You could do a lot worse than that. That's worth 7 mana. Yeah.
100%. Our next card is actually one that I think is super busted. So we saved. This is one of the last cards I think that we've seen spoiled. Yeah, this card is just so messed up. Lagamos, Hand of Hatred, colorless, red, black, legendary creature, human, shaman. It's a 1/3. At the beginning of combat of your turn, you get to create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Tap, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate if 5 or more creatures die this turn. Ham. Oh, this card just seems uncommon. This card's an uncommon.
It's an uncommon.
This card's an uncommon.
What?
This card's
Yeah,
busted, right?
it is. It's absolutely busted. So you get a 2/1 red elemental body at the beginning of combat
Trample,
every single turn
haste.
just for having him out. Like, that's bonkers. You're just getting a body every single turn. And on top of that, you don't sacrifice it till the next end step. So if you want to sacrifice it to other value, like in your post-combat main phase, you can. Like, you can sacrifice this to casualty Obnix. You know, you can sacrifice the little
Little chat.
elemental to casualty Obnixilis or something. Like, you got these options. And on top of that, like the tap ability, it's just a tap ability. There's no mana involved whatsoever. It's demonic tutor.
5 creatures. You know how easy this is to do in Cat Oven? Your
Oh my
cat's usually going to
goodness.
go to the graveyard twice.
Yeah, exactly.
And
The
then
cat
if
goes
you
to the graveyard
have
twice a turn, no
your
matter what.
Fable out,
You got this elemental that's gonna be biting it.
yeah,
If
the
you get,
elemental's going to die by itself too.
mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not hard to do, man. It's not hard to do.
this card
So
is
if
nuts.
it's absolutely nuts. And on top of that, I'm gonna just go ahead and throw this out there. You hit Weatherlight on 2, Lagomos on 3. You're doing it. Like, it's gonna get out of hand really fast. This
Yeah,
is gonna
your
get.
the Phyrexian card, the Weatherlight's going to get the counter. And
Mm-hmm.
then your Lagomos is getting closer to potentially going off because you already have one creature that's being sacrificed. And yeah, I mean, this card, oh, I can't get over how nuts this card is. I read it and I'm like, did the Cat Oven deck really need another card that makes it stronger?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what this card does. It just like, yeah, you're not, this isn't a 4 of. Don't get me wrong, all right?
No, no.
I'm not thinking this card's a 4 of, but it's definitely a 1 to 2 of. And yeah, it automatically gives you food to sacrifice essentially, like just extra
Mm-hmm.
tokens to kind of just die to like your deadly disputes or whatever else. And then yeah, if 5 or more creature die, which is easy, you can with the mayhem double you can sack your cards, kill your opponent's creatures, and before you know it, like five to 7 to 10 things have already hit the graveyard. And then you're tapping this to look for any card in your deck to go
And
get
it goes
more
straight into your
mayhem
hand.
devils. Yeah, and it
It
goes
doesn't
straight
go on
into
top of your
your
library.
hand.
You just get it. It's yeah.
Oh, and then let's
It's
like
nuts.
we're not even talking about
Absolutely nuts.
Commander. In Commander, this card's also nuts. Right, in
Yeah,
Commander gets even better.
in Commander or Historic Brawl, this is going to be the guy. Like 100%, no question.
You can me hook for 2, and this card survives. Wipe the
Yeah, you
board.
meet up for 2. This card survives. Tap it. Go grab whatever the hell you want. It's like,
Ugh,
it's
this card
bonkers.
is nuts. This card is This card is yes. I read it. I read it like 3 times, and I was like, really? And then I showed it to Han, and Han was like, yep, that's the card. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that card's
Wow. Yep.
uncommon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was rare or mythic. I kept reading it, and I was like, this is like rare or
Mhm.
mythic, right? And it's like, no, it's talk about a
This is
set that has some
uncommon.
pushed uncommons in it.
Oh, no
This is
question.
definitely one of them for sure. I mean, listen, viewers, expect to see this card.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna get played somewhere. Like the both
100%.
abilities on this card are very powerful. The stats on it aren't bad. It doesn't just die to 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Lightning Strike's coming back, yeah, they have to waste their Lightning Strike on this. You're probably fine with it, and you might have even gotten some value off of it if that 2/1 at least came in once. The token is trample, so you can get in for extra damage if you need to. I mean,
Right.
this card's nuts, man. I
It's
just
bonkers.
yeah, this card's nuts. I think it's you know what I really like about it is you can give it haste with claim the firstborn, so that way
Yep.
you can use it right away if you need to. There's just so many. This card's messed up. You're gonna see it. You're gonna
Yeah.
see it
And
somewhere.
it's only a 3-drop. Like, they could have made this a 4-drop, and it would have been like, all right, that's an uncommon. It's still good. I'm probably going to run it in something, but as a 3-drop? Holy cow. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, as a 3 this card's definitely gonna get played somewhere.
Right.
Oh, this is
And it's a
nuts.
human and a shaman. Those are relevant creature types and certain archetypes. Like,
Yeah, strong stats, decent
get out of
mana
here.
cost, 2 relevant abilities, and the quote unquote ultimate ability on this is actually not that hard to do. Like 5 or more creatures, whatever. That's doable. You can find some way to do that.
I mean, Burn on the House gives you 3. You get the 1 from this. I mean, like, there are tons of ways
The
to
Chandra makes 2 tokens as well.
Chandra
That
makes 2
3
tokens.
mana
Exactly.
Chandra,
Like,
and
it's
those
not
automatically get
hard.
sacrificed at the end of turn.
Yeah.
So
It's
you're
not,
you need
yeah.
to remember to keep your end step stopped for this because there's going to be situations where a lot of your cards are just getting sacrificed at end step from blitz from whatever, and then you
Mhm.
got to retain that priority to make sure that you're able to use the ability on this to get the full effect.
Yes. That's a
Um,
good call out. Yeah, the control key is your best friend.
yeah,
Yeah.
this card's
Now,
awesome though.
the one thing that I believe we are missing in standard, and check me if I'm wrong, I don't believe in post rotation we will have any unconditional sack outlets. I don't think we'll have any permanent that sits on the battlefield that says sacrifice a creature, do a thing.
I
I
think
I
that
don't believe we have any of those
there
because
might be like an artifact somewhere.
okay, because I know we had Sepulcher
Um,
Ghoul that was like
Pyre Heroes is leaving, right? But it costs
one
mana.
of the best we had. Yeah, Pyre Heroes is leaving.
Yeah, I don't think
I'll
that.
do some research on that because I do. That's something that I think is going to be important. We're also going to be losing Village Rights and Deadly Dispute, which are big.
Little chat. I'm telling you,
But
Ham,
we
it
do have
might be
Little Chat.
time
It's
for
true.
one of our top 10 cards
Might be
from
time for Little
Streets of New
Chat.
Capenna to shine. And like
Lagomos,
we said before,
Grixis,
yeah,
Little Chat. Yes, I'm
yep.
in. Let's go.
Yeah, you play it with, I mean, there's got to be some other token producers here. You
Yeah.
can kind of just start to get a bunch of tokens and then sacrifice a lot of things too. I mean, or Mehook. I mean, just Mehook is just
Good old
good.
Meat Hook.
Let's
When
be
in
honest
doubt,
here. Like
Meat
I
Hook.
said,
Yep.
Mehook for 2, this card stays out, and if 5 things died, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. I mean, this card's good. It's good with Anvil. I
Yep.
don't see why this
Well,
wouldn't get played in the Anvil deck, right?
totally. Well, and I mean, Bloodtooth Harvester on 2. This on 3. You're teed up for a Meat Hook on 2. And if they have a creature that has greater than 2 toughness, you can tap the Bloodtooth Harvester to ping it down, then wipe. Like, yeah, you can do. It's yeah. The line that line is there.
This
It's
card's
yeah.
super strong. The reason we're taking a long time to talk about this one is because, yeah, this one is, this is, you're going to see this.
Mm-hmm.
This you're gonna hate this card so much because you're gonna kill the first one and they play second one, then they just keep getting more value, and then they
Mm-hmm.
start getting the card they need, and then you literally like if this card gets activated once, you probably lose the game, right?
There's a good chance of that. Yeah.
Like your
Oh, and I'm
percentages
thinking
go
like
way
the
down.
Phoenix chick would work in here too, and like
Oh
yeah, there's so
yeah,
so much good stuff you can do with this. It's insane. Yeah.
yeah. This
Yeah, no,
card's
I'm gonna play this
nuts.
card. I'm gonna play the hell out of this card. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, I think this is like the cat oven. There every set there's always a card where I'm like, yep, that's for the cat oven deck.
Yep. 100%.
And this is another one of those cards. So I have to see
Yep.
it with your Ob Nixilis as well. Oh, this card is just messed up, man.
Mm-hmm.
Card is messed up. But yeah, that's actually all the cards that we're going to be talking about today. I know that there was a lot more spoilers overall. There's going to be a link in the description below to magicspoiler.com where we actually see all of our spoilers specifically. These are the cards that we think are actually going to see the most constructed play for now. We're going to have a top 10 and we're going to try to get a top 5 common and uncommons as well for constructed. Those videos are potentially going to be out the beginning of next week, considering that we're getting really, really close to this set coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find the links to our content, HamHocks42, Hollywood Pizza. You can find our Twitch, our YouTubes down below. Don't forget, we also host 3 tournaments a month. All are free to play with cash prizes. This Sunday, we have a standard tournament. This is going to be one of the last standard tournaments, if not the last standard tournament, before the next set comes out. So definitely get all your cards together, play them for one last time, or get your rotation-proof decks to see if they can match up with what the metagame already brings now. So definitely check all that out. And Ham, you got anything else to say here for the viewers?
No, man, I am just so stoked for this. And yeah, definitely keep an eye on all of our content. Keep an eye on the tournaments. Stuff is going to get shaken up big time this rotation. And I can't wait.
For sure. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button, bell notification, leave a like and a comment on the video down below. And stay cheesy, everybody. See you next time.